Hi guys, this is Illusion Podfics. We're going to be reading Spider-Man Reborn by Reunited. This is chapter 10. Peter couldn't run away again. His dad had increased surveillance in his cave, and Alfred had made a point of checking on him every night more often than before. So, he planned better this time. He spent an entire week planning and staying indoors to hopefully lower the guards. Peter just had to wait until his 4th birthday. Alfred lets him go shopping with him sometimes, and after his birthday, he lets Peter pick out any candy he wants. So, he just had to wait till he was in the city with Alfred, outrun him, and save his family from dying. He'll look for Jason and Steph once he's out. If they stayed in Gotham, they could be hurt and hiding, and Jason has to look for them. His dad sometimes loses his cufflinks, and they usually were found under the dresser or the bed. So maybe he couldn't find Steph or Jason because he was always on the roofs. Peter could look for them on the streets. He has to bring them home. Steph will be okay. She isn't dead. Jason is alive. He's just lost. Peter couldn't bring his backpack with him if he didn't want Alfred knowing, so he only brought Quack with him. Alfred pulled the car around and helped Peter into his car seat. He felt guilty for planning to trick Alfred, but he couldn't understand. Peter was the curse. He couldn't stay if he wanted his family to be happy. He couldn't let them be picked off when all he has to do is leave. He just has to find his missing siblings, and then he can leave. "Stay close to me, Master Peter," Alfred ordered, taking a shopping cart from the line. Peter did, holding onto the tail of Alfred's coat. He'll wait until Alfred set the bags in the car before running. Alfred wouldn't leave the groceries, and he wouldn't be able to run after Peter if he wanted to. He just had to wait. Peter picked a bag of Skittles as his birthday treat, standing on his toes to hand it to the cashier. Alfred nodded, fishing out the card to pay. Soon. Peter stayed close as they navigated the parking lot. Alfred parked in the middle since today was busier than it was last time Peter had been brought along. He knew if he was caught now, Peter would never be allowed to join Alfred again, so he had to be fast. Soon. Wait. Alfred started transferring the bags, reminding Peter to stay put. Inching behind him, Peter quickly took off between cars, shouting an apology to assuage some of the guilt welling up inside. "Go! Run!" Peter raced through the car park, between people and cars until hitting the street. He'd never wandered through the city alone before, but maybe that was better. Peter could have some luck saved up after everything and stumbled into his siblings. Just not Dick or Tim. They might lock him up forever if they found him. No one spared him a glance as he ran past, ducking around businessmen and women until the throngs of people slowly melted away. Peter stayed on the main streets, wary of the dark alleyways. If he just went further away from all the cameras, he could avoid Barbara tattling on him too. He couldn't be caught until he found Steph and Jason. He couldn't stop running. He had to push. Run. Keep going. Peter could never be Spider-Man if he couldn't run. The further he ran, the more the scenery changed. Broken down buildings, graffiti covered the walls with glass, and bullet casings coating the sidewalk. People melted into worn and tired civilians, tears and patches in their clothing. Cautious eyes swept their surroundings. He started getting their attention, too. He dressed casually, jeans and a red polo, but the people here had patches and holes in their clothes. Eventually, Peter had to duck into an alleyway, panting and lightheaded. He hadn't run that much ever, but he couldn't stop yet. He had to keep going. He should be far enough that Alfred wouldn't find him. Barbara and Tim might check street cameras, but Peter knows there are less here. He watched Tim look through some footage on his laptop before, and they were more spread out, leaving more blind spots than other areas. "What you doing here, kid? Where's your daddy gone?" A man's voice broke through Peter's breathing. Peter stepped back, eyeing the knife in the man's hand. He wasn't in rags, but he fit in with people here. The brown jacket had sewn stitches over the shoulder and arms, and his pants had red dark stains on his left leg. "I'm looking for someone." Peter stepped back again as the man came closer. Remembering Steph's terrifying lesson, Peter dropped Quack before balling his fist and shifted on his feet. The stance wouldn't help much against an adult, but it showed he meant business. even if the man only laughed at him. "Aren't you feisty? Come here." Peter edged further away from the man, his back to the opening behind him. "I said come here, kid." Peter ducked as the man surged forward. He pushed his fist out to hit the guy between his legs. The man stumbled to the ground, cursing words worse than Jason tried teaching him. He didn't wait for the guy to recover and sprinted back out of the alley. Racing further away, Peter kept an eye out for either sibling. He couldn't run forever, but Peter found a space to hunker down in. With the sun setting behind the clouds, his family would all be out searching for him, if they haven't already. He climbed over a few boxes before squeezing between two dumpsters. The smell was disgusting and burned his nose uncomfortably, but Peter could hide here until morning. He had ran from 2 more creeps before finding this spot. If he waited till morning, his dad wouldn't find him, and he could keep them safe. He just had to bring Steph and Jason back first. After they were back home, Peter could leave. He didn't want to, but if he stayed, the curse could take and take. He couldn't watch them leave again. He can't lose anyone else. Night fell over the alley. Darkness blanketed his view, hiding boxes and litter under the veil. Peter was never that afraid of the dark, but he preferred having a little light in here. He could hear sirens go by and shots ringing out. Peter pushed himself deeper into the space to avoid detection. It didn't sound like anyone was out there, but he felt too scared to leave. Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Peter Wayne Kyle was a 4-year-old boy without any superpowers to protect himself or others. He couldn't go out to stop the fighting or save anyone. Not yet. Hopefully his dad was protecting people instead of looking for him. The people of Gotham need Batman. Peter needs to find his siblings. At some point in the night, he must have fallen asleep. Peter woke up to darkness, but the sounds of people walking told him it was morning at least. He had to wiggle and push himself before he tumbled into the boxes surrounding the dumpster. Peter's hand landed in a puddle of knot water, and Peter gagged at the smell. It was mushy. Gross. Wiping his hands on the boxes first, and his jeans next, Peter glanced around the alley. Jason and Steph weren't here. No one was. Slipping out of the alley, he made his way further south. They were here somewhere. Peter was a vigilante. Peter was a vigilante before, and he found people plenty of times. He just has to avoid the criminals while he searches for them. Peter slipped into a bat burger, ducking past people before running into the bathroom. He kept his head lowered so the cameras couldn't get a read on his face. Inside the restrooms, the sinks were all vacant. Peter spared a glance at all the closed stalls and empty urinals before climbing onto the counter between 2 sinks. He sat between them, washing his smelly hand under the cold water and lathered his hand with soap. He didn't want to accept just what his hand touched. Nope, it was not water, and that was it. "Need some help, kiddo?" A man came in, the door swinging shut behind him. Peter didn't recognize the guy, but he didn't look like any of the creeps that tried to kidnap him earlier. He missed the spidey sense he had before. It would have been useful to have here. "No, thank you." Peter slid off the counter, suspiciously taking the paper towel the man pulled for him. "Name's Roger. Your parents waiting on ya?" "Yes, sir." Peter stepped around the man, keeping his back away from him. "Gotta go back." Peter pushed out of the door before making a break for the doors leading outside. He shouldn't have so much trouble during the day, and he doubted he could be on the run for long. He didn't even have any money, only the bag of Skittles in his pocket for food. He made it about a block before Peter ducked into the closest alley. If he ate a few Skittles now, he could ration it. Spread out the time he ate the candy until he ran out. It wasn't filling, but the sugar rush should help him. "This isn't the safest place to eat, kiddo." Roger stepped into the alley behind him, his hands stuffed into his pockets. Peter stumbled back, turning to run off when 4 more men cut off his only other exit, their bulky frames blocking the alley. "My daddy's waiting for me." Maybe he does need Batman's help. Peter stepped back, deeper into the alley. He couldn't see anyone inside it besides him and the men, and he was sure no one would actually come running to help a dumb kid. Maybe this was for the best. He'd be taken somewhere worse, for sure, but his family would be free of the curse. They won't die because of him anymore. "Sure he is, kid. Bet he's missing you real bad. Rogers walked slowly after him, clearly not worried about Peter running. Not like there was anywhere to run. A soft thud behind him caught Peter's attention. An older girl knocked one of the 4 men to the ground before turning onto the other 3. Peter jumped back at the fight as she darted between their arms and hitting the various spots that dropped them to the ground. Her black hair was short, trailing behind her as she moved with brutal precision. Her hits landed easily as she dodged their strikes. She moved like Black Widow, full of grace and violence, knowing just where to hit with ingrained training. Peter was enraptured. An arm wrapped around his neck, lifting him from the ground before he could blink. "Let him go, girlie." Roger slid a knife under Peter's chin, the cold blade biting at his neck. The girl stopped, though none of the men seemed conscious enough to get back up yet. Dark brown eyes locked onto his as Peter ordered her to let go. Peter had the feeling that she wouldn't. Even in Roger's gasp, he felt confident she would save him. Her clothes were dark, tight-fitting, almost like Batman's suit without the insignia. She didn't respond to Roger, just watched them. "Get out of here, girlie. Boss won't be wanting you," Roger growled, stepping backwards towards the other side of the alley. The girl wouldn't be able to strike while the knife was kept on Peter. Steph had tried to teach him how to get out of a hold like this, but his dad had dragged him away before he could learn. Maybe he could kick hard enough to loosen the hold on him. Peter tried wiggling out first. The knife's tip sunk into his neck a little as he moved. He ignored the blade, swinging his legs to gain momentum. Roger cursed before he managed to hit just above his thigh with the heel of his shoe. The attempted attack from Peter was enough for the girl to move, flying past him and twisting Roger's arm away from Peter. Her leg shot up between them, throwing Roger's head back as he fell from the force. Peter watched the body drop, his head bouncing off the asphalt where he laid with a sharp crack. Is he dead? Peter looked at the girl as she looked back at him. She turned to Roger for only a second before shaking her head. "Oh, that's good." Peter waited for her to say something, or ask anything, but they just stood there. Peter eyed the 4 bodies from the other end of the alley before taking her hand in his. She flinched back before settling a short distance away from him. "Oh no, I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" Peter frowned, trying to catch a glimpse of her hand that she hid behind her back. She shook her head, stepping further from him. Her right hand pointed to her neck before directed to him. "My neck? It doesn't hurt." She nodded before turning to leave. The idea of being all alone again scared him. He couldn't protect himself like he used to before. He couldn't protect them like he wanted to. "Hey, wait! Are you alone too?" Peter watched her pause at the mouth of the alley. Her head turned slightly in his direction before she nodded. "Do you want to be alone together? I have Skittles." Peter fished out the bag he tried to eat from earlier, raising the offer to the girl. He waited for an answer, but she didn't give one. Eventually, Peter decided that he'll stick with her anyway. His dad kept bringing kids home, so Peter can too. If he finds Jason and Steph first. "I'm Peter. There wasn't any paper around that Peter could use, nor any pencils to write with. Do you have a name?" She nodded, but didn't offer much more. Peter held the bag of Skittles for her, which she carefully took. She had to show her to shake the bag for them to fall into her hand before he took it back. "Well, I'm looking for my brother and sister. Can you help me?" She nodded, eating the Skittles in one go. Peter decided to stay silent about them, since she saved his life. They left the alley together, Peter sticking close to her as they walked further down the street. Since she couldn't talk, Peter decided to do so for the both of them. He started by telling her everything about Steph. The girl smiled when he complained about how she was always pinching his cheeks. Mystery Girl had the audacity to try it too. Peter squeaked, bounding away from the pinch before joining her side again. Peter huffed, rubbing his cheek. "You'd like her." Eventually, Peter tried to guess her name. She shook her name to all the names he tried, but there couldn't be that many. He felt braver having her with them while they searched. The streets seemed brighter than before. He wasn't alone anymore. The bag of Skittles were empty by the time the sun began to set. The girl tried to lead him away from the alley Peter slept in before. "We gotta sleep." She shook her head, walking away before stopping to wait for him. Peter sighed, following after her. He didn't want to be alone again, but he also wasn't ready for his parents to find him. He needs to find Steph before anything else. They walked down another few streets before they came to a stop. Peter took her hand when Robin dropped down in front of them. The girl stepped in front of him, putting herself between him and Robin. "Let him go," Robin spoke, shifting in a fighting stance that she mirrored. "Batman, I found him." Uh-oh. "Wait, she helped me." Peter slipped around her to stand between them. He glared at Tim, who looked between them. "She saved me." "Let him go," Batman growled as he landed next to Robin. He looked scarier now, the gravelly tone deeper than Peter's ever heard it go. Her friend stood still, ready for a fight, her hand gently guiding Peter back behind her. He huffed, surging past her again. "Stop it! She's my friend! She's helping me look for Steph!" Robin stepped back, his hands clenched at his side. Peter focused on his dad, on Batman, as the vigilante stayed stock still. "Peter, come on." "No! We're gonna find Steph. You lied. She's alive and we're gonna find her." "Did she tell you that?" Robin asked, moving around them from a distance. "I know it." Batman sighed, crouching low with a hand held out. "Peter, come on." Steph was alive. Somewhere. He couldn't do this alone like before. He wasn't ready yet. Peter ran forward, passing the hand to hug his dad. Gloved hands wrapped around him, lifting him from the sidewalk gently. "You're going home, Peter." Peter heard the sound of a grapple golf before he wiggled to push away from his dad. "Wait! She's coming too!" "What?" Both Batman and Robin froze. "She wants to meet Steph. You always bring home kids. She's my sister now." Peter managed to free himself from his dad, dropping to the sidewalk. He ran back to the girl, taking her hand. This time, she didn't flinch away. She just watched him, confusion flickering past her eyes. "You don't have to be alone anymore." "Peter," Batman started, staring at the two warily. "He's already a serial adopter, too. Go figure." Robin snorted, ducking at a look from Batman. "She's my sister, too," Peter repeated himself, glaring at his dad from her side. He squeezed her hand, smiling when she squeezed back. Batman sighed, watching them for a moment before pressing a button on his suit. He pulled his grapple gun back as Peter pulled his new sister to meet him. "This is Daddy. You can call him Dad, or His dad's gloved hand covered his mouth before he could finish. Peter tried talking past it, but he doubted she understood. "We'll talk later," Batman sighed as Robin sniggered from the side. The Batmobile came around the corner, a signal where Robin darted off onto the rooftops as Peter piled in with his newest sibling. "Cass!" Peter ran through the halls looking for his sister. It's only been a week since his dad brought him home with Cass and finding out her name. Peter had been understandably grounded and wasn't allowed outside without supervision. His dad and Tim had increased the cameras outside, and no one would tell Peter where they were. Despite that, Peter still had plenty to do now that he has a new sibling, like hide and seek, which Cass won every time. "No fair," Peter groaned when the closet was empty too. "He checked everywhere." "You win, Cass," Tim called from behind him, clearly not finding her downstairs. Peter looked around, waiting for his sister to reveal herself. It wasn't long before she came around the corner, a shy smile on her lips. Peter immediately ran to her, wrapping his arms around her legs. "Can you teach me? Teach me, please!" Peter bounced on his feet after letting her go, jumping around her as she nodded. Cass won the past 4 games, and Peter wanted to learn her tricks. Without his powers, he'll have to rely on other skills. Stealth was the necessary skill to have, and he has the perfect teacher. "Great. I'm gonna finish my homework, like I'm supposed to," Tim teased, leaving to go back into the library where Peter dragged him from. When he couldn't find Cass for too long, Peter had pulled Tim in for his added help, even though he was no help in the end. Peter ignored him in favor of following Cass. She won't teach him to fight, but practicing stealth was a better place to start anyway. He'll find Steph and Jason soon. Soon. Just a little while longer. Alright guys, and that is the end of Chapter 10 of Spider-Man Reborn by Reunited. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next chapter.